sisters in the Sukkah. It's great to see so many familiar faces and some new faces. And a special welcome to the newest member of our clergy, Rabbi Jordana. Welcome to you. We're so glad to have you tonight. I'm Becky Risto. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Vice President of Religious Living for Sisterhood. And although we can't be together in person tonight, we're together in the Sukkah in person. We're together in spirit as we celebrate this festival of Sukkot. Many of you have attended this event in the past, and if you have attended, you know that we have not had a really good track record for actually being in the Sukkah. So who would have ever guessed that something besides weather would keep us out of the Sukkah? It's just sort of beyond belief still. So, but we're all glad. We're glad that everybody's here, and we're looking forward to the program. So now just a little bit about the evening. Rabbi Jordana will lead us in an explanation of Sukkot and its significance, and we will say the blessings together, and then Rabbi will talk to us about the Prophetess Deborah. We will then go into breakout rooms led by facilitators, and we'll come back together for a recap and share some insights and some good and welfare. And then we'll end the evening with a few words from our sisterhood's president, Risa Friedman. I'd like to thank Rabbi Jordana and Risa and Karen Rawson and Sonia Cantor and our facilitators, who will be introduced a little bit later. And without further ado, I'll turn this over to Rabbi Jordana. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. It is so nice to see you. I so wish that we were sitting together actually in a sukkah. We actually got to have dinner outside tonight in our outdoor patio, like a faux sukkah. So it is actually a night then we could have actually been together to eat and to dwell in a sukkah. So I am so sorry that we are not able to do that. But I love this opportunity to spend some time with you and to really dive into what Sukkot means, and to one of my very favorite prophetess is Deborah. We'll spend a little time with her in a little bit. She's fabulous and wonderful, and I'm very excited to spend some time digging into her. As I said right before we got on the call, one of my favorite things about her is that she really, really annoyed the men around her and the men who came after her, and I think that makes her especially fun because she's a bit of a rebel rouser, and I find that really inspiring too. So we will get into all of that later. And I do hope that throughout tonight you'll be commenting in the chat. We might have some opportunity to actually engage in conversation with each other as well throughout the study, because it's so one of the things that makes Jewish study so great is the fact that we learn together and we learn from each other, and hearing all your voices. So I really hope we have the opportunity to do some exchange of ideas tonight as well. So I did want to start a little bit by talking about Sukkot. As you know, we are in the middle of this beautiful, beautiful, joyous, wonderful holiday of Sukkot. It really is this opportunity to dwell in our sukkahs, to eat, to drink, to sleep when we can, and really spend some time in the sukkah. I know several of you came by. I'd love to see a show of hands who came by Temple on Sunday and got to drive by our sukkah. And it was really wonderful. I hope you guys had a good time, because we really did too. It was really wonderful to be able to dwell, or at least have you guys all dwell adjacent to the sukkah and be there. I know not everyone could have because of your schedules, but it was really lovely for those of us who were able to enjoy in that tradition. One of the things that I love that we really appreciated on Sunday too is it's not just the lulav represents all the different parts of the body. You know, it is about the spine and the eyes and the lips that's what's representative in the lulav, and the etrog is supposed to be our hearts. So we are praying with all the parts of our body. And what I think is especially beautiful is that when we shake the lulav and the etrog together, it's also the sound. You know, Cantor Aviv and I were joking about how we were trying to get up to the cars as close as possible so you could hear the sound of the shaking of the lulav and smell. We were wafting the smell of the etrog to the cars, because it is a very multi-sensory experience. And I think part of the reason we do that is because because we appreciate God with all the parts of our body and all the different ways, but also because we have all of these blessings all around us all of the time. And I know we don't always feel like we have these blessings around us, and there's certainly times in our life when we feel like there aren't blessings at all. But I do think this holiday helps us reminds us to kind of look in and see what those blessings are, and to dwell in those and amongst those, and to really appreciate the blessings such as they are, even if they are not exactly the blessings that we wish we were celebrating together tonight. One of the other things that I love about the Sukkah is that it's both really strong and really fragile. And I think that's a really beautiful combination, because I don't know about you, but I think there's some times in life when I feel both really strong and really fragile. And I think that we don't necessarily celebrate that or appreciate that or acknowledge that as often as we should. That I think there is something about it being this temporary dwelling that helps us look at the fragility of our own lives and our own selves and those around us. But also they're incredibly strong too, because we've had this tradition for so many years. So I really appreciate this dichotomy and this ability to highlight so many things within ourselves, within our culture. And also about the chance that we can spend time outside. How many of you guys, I'd love to see a show of hands, like go out into your sukkah or your faux sukkahs and look up at the beautiful stars. Have you guys ever had a chance to do that? It really is an amazing thing to be sitting out there and looking up at the stars, though you're outside, but kind of inside. It really is a beautiful connection to nature and to all of those things. So I would like to switch it up. Instead of saying the blessings for the Sukkah, I would like to say a Shechianu, because I feel like this is really a Shechianu moment. This is the first time we're ever doing something like this over Zoom. But I think the fact that we are still able to connect and to be together, and it shows both the strength and resilience of Judaism. So if I can put my colleague, Cantor Aviva, on the spot for a moment. Are you there? Would you mind terribly leading us in a Shechianu, allowing us to reach this moment, the celebration in time?
Absolutely, as long as you all sing along with me. So all you have to do is move your lips and I'll assume that you're singing. So we join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that. So I would love now to dive into learning about one of my very favorite women. And the reason that we do this is during Sukkot, we often get to welcome guests. We welcome friends normally, we welcome family, we sit and dwell in our sukkahs together. But there's also a tradition, and I know it is hard. I so wish we could do that. But there's also a tradition of inviting these metaphorical gifts, these metaphorical guests. When Rabbi Roxanne was kind enough to let me go and visit classrooms on Sunday, I had a lot of fun asking the kids, who would they, if you could invite anyone, dead or alive, real or fictional, into your sukkah, who would you invite? And we got a fabulous range of answers from all of the kids. It is this idea of welcoming the stranger, welcoming these guests into our sukkah. So tonight, the person that I want to welcome is Deborah, and I'm going to share my screen with you so we can learn a little bit about her together tonight. And again, I would love to hear your comments on her because she is really quite fabulous. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, can you guys all see it? Awesome. So to give you a little bit of background about her, we are now in the book of Judges. We're in what we call the cycle of Judges. This happens over and over and over again, where the Israelites do something bad, and then God lets a ruler come up, punish them for a while, and then they repent, and everything is good again for a while, and then the same cycle happens over and over and over again. It happens a lot in the Tanakh in general, but especially in the book of Judges. This cycle continues and continues and continues. So I want to start us tonight, and that's essentially what these first 3 verses are talking about. So I want to start at verse 4. When we first meet Deborah. And I'm going to read this out loud. If we were in person, I would have somebody else do that, but tonight I will do that. And when I'm reading this, I would love you to either say aloud or in the chat, what do you notice about this verse in particular? And I'll leave it at that, but what pops out at you about this, about verse 4? And Deborah, a woman, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidot, was judging Israel at that time. So either in the chat or out loud, what pops out at you about Deborah?
I want to say, I think what's interesting is that Deborah seems to be the first time I've ever heard of a woman judging Israel. Women have seemed to take a back seat to most everything in Mount Sinai. I guess there are no women there, and it's the first time I've seen or heard of somebody. I mean, I wish I were that assertive, but I'm not.
And we will get to her assertiveness in just a minute. But yes, she is the first woman who is a judge at the time, which is really, really amazing that she has that role. Any other thoughts about this line?
Even with that, with her being the first woman mentioned, she's still defined by her relationship to a man. She's still the wife of, instead of just standing on her own.
Right. And what's really interesting about that is that there's actually a couple different ways to read that. That some translations say that she is the wife of Lapidot, which means torches, or she is sometimes thought of as a fiery woman. So it kind of depends, a spirited woman. So the commentators have a big debate about that, whether she's actually married or not, and how exactly she's being defined there. I kind of like to think of her as a fiery, spirited woman. Any other thoughts about this? One of the things I personally find really interesting too is that it is front and center that she is a woman. You know, it says that there are so many adjectives like in this particular line that talks about her gender, like you can't miss it. First, it's her name, Deborah, which is a female name, a woman, a prophetess, or a female prophet. And what's really interesting is this word, neviah, it's not used very often at all. Like this is one of the only instances, it's the only time in this book of Judges that it's used, and one of the very, very few times that any sort of woman is being described as a prophet at all. So she's very unique in this way. And again, it talks about her being the wife of Lapidot, or as this fiery woman. So you can't miss that she is a woman in this line. It kind of hits you in the face. So any thoughts about that? Well, we can come back to that. And here it says, again, a really big, oh, sorry, was that somebody saying something?
No, it's just me. I just had a quick question. I want to know, again, who is Lapidoth again? Who is Lapidoth?
So that is often defined as her husband, Lapidot, okay. But that is actually one of the things that's really interesting is that we don't know anything about him. We don't know anything about his background. It's the only time he's ever actually mentioned. It's called what's called a hypoxlegomena. So it's like the one time this word appears in the Bible, there's a specific word for that, which in rabbinic school we thought was a really fun fact to know that there's a word for that. But that is the only time he's ever mentioned. We know nothing about him. So what's interesting is that that's similar often to the women in the Bible, that we don't know anything about them, especially the spouses. And here everything is kind of flipped a little bit, that she is front and center and he is in the background, which I think is also just an interesting way that they are playing with typical gender roles in the story.
Rabbi Andrea Pachter has commented that she's called a prophetess. And was she the only person who was called a prophetess in the Bible?
She is not the only one in the Bible, one of very few, but she is the only one in this book, in the book of Judges, that is. So like, you know, Moses' sister Miriam is also called a prophetess, but it is very, very few people are given that term. And that's really a term of high praise.
So do we know she's a prophetess because the word is in the female form?
Yeah.
As opposed to the male form?
It is in the female form. Absolutely. Which is cool. You know, it is definitely an interesting thing about Hebrew being a gendered language in that way, that here we know specifically it is describing her as a female prophet or a woman as a prophet, a prophetess, which is a cool thing about Hebrew.
And what does it mean, judging Israel?
So we're about to get to that. So there at the time, there was the roles of prophets, who were kind of the people who, you know, we know our prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi, you know, there's some prophets that we know about who often were sharing God's words, but there were also judges who were, you know, helping to solve problems between people. You know, it is similar to some of the roles that we still think of as a judge today. And we know that this was a role that Moses had. And then later he distributed out to have other people help him be a judge. But judging really was helping people navigate life and the conflicts that arose between people. So she's praised here too, because not only does she communicate with God and serve God in that way, but she also helps the people as well. So she is extremely well thought of, as indicated by this line. So we're going to keep going. And she sat under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the country of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went up to her for judgment. So any thoughts about that line?
So I'm imagining,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sort of imagining palms of these three judges, and she has her own palm, and she's in the middle of these two, and people come up to her and talk. I mean, that's kind of the picture it paints to me.
Yeah.
It seems to me odd because often the judge or the solver of disputes was the head of the clan or the tribe or whatever, and she would not have been.
Mm-mm. No, I mean, what the commentators really think about this is because she is so well thought of, that she has her own palm. Like the only other person who often the heads of tribes would go to the people and help them, you know, solve whatever problem had occurred. But she was stationary and they would come to her. So they were saying that she is so well thought of that she had this palm. She had this palm of Deborah where they would come to her. And Moses is the only other person that we know of who had his place. He was the only other person who they would come to in this way. So often the commentators put her in the same category with Moses, which is really remarkable because we know what high praise that is. So any thoughts about that?
Is there any explanation of how she became a prophetess or was?
No, it's one of the things I find most fascinating about her in this story is that there's no background. We don't know why she was chosen for these roles. We don't know what happened before that. I mean, the first time you hear her is in verse 4, which we just read. All right, so for the sake of time, we will keep going. As you guys might or might know, the name Barak means lightning. And here, Barak is this, this general, basically this commander. And it says, and Deborah summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kesh in Naphtali, and she said to him, has not Adonai, the God of Israel, commanded you to go and march toward Mount Tabor? And you will take with you 10,000 men from the children of Naphtali and the children of Zebulun. And I will draw Sisera, who we didn't read. He was the commander of the other army that Israel is warring with, the captain of Jebin's army, with his chariots and his crowd to you at Wadi Kodesh, and I will deliver him to your hand. So the details of that line are not hugely important, but what I wanted to focus on is Deborah summoned Barak. So here she is, she's summoning this commander. So again, this is really playing with a lot of gender norms that, you know, this commander, this general isn't used to being summoned, and certainly not used to being summoned by a woman. And so it's very, very, very unusual.
She's sort of reprimanding him. Why has he not done what God has told him to do?
Absolutely. She is definitely putting him in his place. She's absolutely reprimanding him, which I think is so fascinating. A lot of the commentaries play with, there's a lot of like gender switches, again, gender switches here, you know, typical ones that, you know, he is much more like subservient and she is much more dominant, and she's speaking to him in a way that he is not used to being spoken to.
Well, it indicates that he has some timidity or maybe fear because he knows he's going to be facing 10,000 men. So that kind of comes out in her questioning.
Right.
And we know that she's strong.
Right.
It's interesting to contrast her with, the first thing that came to my mind was Esther, who gets the powerful man in her life to do something by carefully leading him in the direction she wants him to go and presenting him a situation where he has to do what she wants because she's essentially backed him into a corner and put him right where she wants him. Whereas this is much more forthright. And I don't think, other than Miriam, there's any other matriarch or female Torah figure who is so direct.
Yes, she's put him in a place where he's between Adonai and her. You know, he's between a rock and a hard place.
Right. And what's interesting too is the commentators often compare her with Esther, actually. And we might or might not have time to get to that, but that there's a line of thinking that does make exactly a lot of the points that you guys are making. All right, so I'm just going to keep going for the sake of time, because talk about his timidity. This is what Barak says to her. And Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you do not go with me, I will not go. Which I think is fascinating for this general. This is what he responds. He says he will only go if Deborah goes with him. And the commentators have like a field day with that. They think a lot, they ask a lot about like, is it his faith that's lacking? What is it that he wants? Why is it so important for her to be there? But I just think it's such an interesting image that he only goes with her. He only goes to war, to this battle, because she goes with him. So any thoughts about that?
That comment just reminds me of the way a child would talk to a mother.
Oh.
And there is a lot of thought about that, actually, that it is very like maternal in some ways. It is very like, you know, he is like the child in some ways, and she is much more like the mother. And she is called the mother of Israel, but we don't actually know anything about her family. We don't know if she actually is a mother or not. I have shared before that one of the interesting comments about her is that she is postmenopausal, because of that she is a lot less threatening in that way. Which I think is really fascinating, that's kind of how some of the male commentators wrapped their minds around her. but I'm not going to take that any further, but I do think that's fascinating. So I'll read you what he says, and then there's just a few of these comments I want to look at really quickly because I just think they're super fun. And she says, surely I will go with you, but there will be no glory for you on the journey you take, because Adonai will give Sisera to the hand of a woman. And he does, but we're not going to get into that part of the story. So I'm just going to share one other page with you really quick. So these are some of the rabbinic quotes about her. And I will start with these ones I think are so, it just kind of gives you a sense. Some of the male commentators where this stuff comes from really loved her, and some of them really struggled with her and her power. So I want to start with this top one because it's, oh, please, Ann.
The page looks, it's all, at least it's all crooked on mine. I can't read any of it. It looks like it's curled.
Can you not read it?
No.
Oh no, okay, well I will read it to you really quick and I'll stop sharing it then so we can see each other's faces better. I'm sorry that you can't read it. What the commentary of the men said in our canon, they say, Deborah, a prophet, judged Israel. So going back to the comment that the line that we read. With regard to this verse, Rav Becchia said 4 sayings: woe to the living who need help from the dead. Woe to the strong who need help from the weak. Woe to the seeing who need help from the blind. And woe to the generation who is led by a woman.
Oh.
Which I just think is fascinating. Again, there were other comments that is much more positive towards her and really comments about what she did do for the people. But I think what I find so interesting about her is she was very much in the male sphere. You know, she was a judge and she was a prophet, which were very much the male realm. And so some people really had a struggle with that and difficulty with that. But that's also one of the things that I love so much about her that I find so interesting is that she was a complete trailblazer. There was no other woman who had that role. And she spoke her mind and she was honest and she was direct. And I think it's really inspiring, especially now for women who sometimes I feel like our voices are squashed down by society. And I think it's really fascinating to have these role models of women who were not afraid to speak up and not afraid to get under people's skin. And not all of us, none of us are going to be out there as prophets and judges in the way that she was, but I still think that we can learn from her and be inspired by her and really take her model as one for us to follow in whatever that way means to each and every one of us, because I think it'll mean different things to each of us, but I still think there are lessons that we each can learn from her. So I invited up, we have literally like 1 minute before we have to split up to the next section. I just invite you if there's any comments or any things that come to mind based on this very quick study that we had of Deborah.
Well, doesn't Deborah mean bee? And so she's very busy as a bee. She's very active, can be aggressive, and that kind of suits her.
100%. And sometimes some of the commentators make her into a hornet rather than a bee. But I think a bee is a much more beautiful image because bees, you know, they make honey and they make their hives and they hold these colonies. So I think that is a much more generous and lovely reading of her. But yes, that is what it means. Any other thoughts about her? I saw there's some lovely comments in the chat, some about wanting palms in their office and people talking about menopause. But what I do find one of the most fascinating things about her is the way the men had to try to deal with her. But I do think my bottom line about her is I think she is incredibly inspiring, and I think there's much that we can all learn from her in our own ways. So with that, I have to turn it over. It's my pleasure to turn it over to the next part of the evening, giving us all a chance to share a little bit more about ourselves and learn a little bit more about ourselves with each other. So Karen.
Thank you. Good evening. Of course, when you try to get somewhere. I'm going to explain the breakout rooms. Each group is going to have a facilitator to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to introduce themselves. And if you are comfortable, to tell the group what your strengths are and how you can best use them to inspire your own passions and inspire others. We want everybody to have a chance to participate. So please be mindful of keeping your comments kind of short in the first pass. You'll have a full minute to talk. And if time remains after each person has introduced themselves, the facilitator will keep the conversation going. There will be a 1-minute warning. We're going to have 9 minutes in total. And that will come toward the end of the session. I'd like to thank Sarah Cox, Robin Reese, Sarah Freeman, and Benny Silver, who are joining me as facilitators. And now we're going to all
So I hope that we are all back from the breakout rooms. I just at the very end got asked a really interesting question, which was, what was it that made people follow Deborah? And the truth is, we don't really know. We just know she was completely accepted in this role. What I think is so fascinating about her is that that we know nothing about her background, but we know she's completely accepted in this role, because we know that that when she summons Barak, he comes, and he will only go to battle because she's there. And we know that that the people go to see her to be judged. So we don't know about what the selection process was, why she was in that role, or why people followed her. We just know they did. Which it's one of the things I love about her too, is because we can each then also come up with our own answer to her, like, what was it about her that put her in that role? How did she get to be in that role? Because we don't really, and the commentators have lots of different arguments and attribute lots of different comments to her and say it was different attributes, including some of the things she did for her husband, and including her own wisdom that she got in her own right, which I certainly hope is true. But there are many, many, many answers to that question. But I think that makes her all the more interesting and all the more real, and even more of a role model, because there are so many different answers to that question. So it is my great honor now to be able to lead us into the next part of the evening, which I hope we had some time to really dwell in our own blessings and our own positivity. You know, some of the people in the group that I was in were saying, like, we don't often sit around and talk about our good things. You know, even for a minute, we don't normally just say, I am so fabulous about this X or Y or Z. And I think sometimes as women, I think that is something we need to do more. You know, I think it is great when we as women get to say, I am fabulous at X, because I don't think we dwell in that enough. And I think that is one of the great things about Sukkot, is that we get to dwell in those things, and we get to dwell in those good, you know, in our attributes and our blessings and the things that we do really well in life. And Deborah is one kind of role model, but she is certainly not the only kind of role model. There are so many different kinds of being role models and being, you know, people who shake up the world in different ways. And I think that this is a fabulous opportunity for us to think about that and think about our own way we contribute to the world, and do a little bit of tikkun olam, because we all do that in our own ways. And I think it's wonderful to have a chance to acknowledge that. So now what we get to do is, now that we've shared the good things about ourselves, we wanted to take a little bit of time to do some good and welfare and share the good things that are happening in our lives. So if you've had anything happen that is just awesome, that you're excited about, that you're proud about, go ahead and put that in the chats. It's really a wonderful opportunity for us as women to celebrate each other, to celebrate with each other, to acknowledge the good things that are happening in our lives. I know our world can feel really dark right now, and all the more important to be able to say, this great thing is happening. So go ahead and do that now. We would love to hear the good things that are going on with you. Any good things going on? Oh, someone voted today. Excellent. Thank you for sharing the good news that is happening. Got a second birthday coming up. Thank you for the lovely comments on our services. We were really proud about how all of that went. Thank you for, you know, working on all these amazing things at IHC with Brit Olam, all those amazing things.
And Rabbi, it's Sonia. I was just going to say that we are recording this whole meeting, and we will send out a text of all the chat messages so everybody can read this, because they're going fast and furious. So I'll email those out to everybody.
Well, thank you for so much. I know I'm trying to catch them all. It's hard to catch them all, but it is fabulous that there are so many amazing, fabulous, wonderful things that are happening. And I'm so glad that they will be recorded so everyone can share in them. So we'll give another couple minutes for people to write in their positive things. And I so agree with my colleague who said it's awesome. It's so great to hear all of these wonderful things, and bringing light. I feel like talking about this is really bringing lights to all of our lives, being able to share in all of this goodness. So we'll allow another few minutes to share any good things. And even if we don't necessarily have these great things to share right now, I think what is so nice is, we've just gone through the High Holy Days, which is always the joy of starting a new year. We are in this holiday of Sukkot, which is all about joy and gladness and celebration and harvest. And the times do feel dark, but we can so see that there's still so much good and so much love and so much brightness in our world. So hopefully long may that continue. So as those notes are coming in, I turn it over to Risa.
And thank you, Rabbi Jordana and Rabbi Roxanne and Cantor Aviva for leading us all in such a lovely, lovely meeting. And I want to especially thank all of the breakout room facilitators, Karen Rosson and Sarah Cox, Sarah Freeman, Benny Silver, and Robin Weiss. And I think you ladies just did a fabulous job. And so many things to say thank you about and for. Thanks to everyone who donated to the Greenbrier Food Bag Project, the diapers and the wipes drive. And it was lovely. I did that myself on Sunday. And it was just great to drive past the Sukkah. And if you didn't notice, in addition to her cute t-shirt, Rabbi Roxanne has lulav and etrog earrings. And we need to carry those in the gift shop, Bonnie. They're cute. And the diapers and the wipes benefit the Grassroots Project. And also coming sooner, as opposed to later, will be Thanksgiving. And we have the annual Thanksgiving Basket Project. And if you haven't signed up, there's time to do it. If, like myself, you have something that is not allowing you to go lift heavy turkeys by yourself, you can partner with someone and you can do it as a team effort. And that can be a real fun way for families to do something in a joint fashion for that. So if you need to sign up, if you have any questions, get in touch with Benny Silver, who is our VP of Social Action. And also upcoming events, we're in the process of fine-tuning what we will be able to do for annual events, like our partnership with Jewish Family Services, Adopt a Family, Hanukkah Hellos, and our Hanukkah gift shop social and sale. So stay tuned, watch your emails, and check out Facebook and the Sisterhood website for more information on that. More fun things, new things. There is also underway a Mahjong Tournament. And if you would like to help with this, yes, get in touch with our VP of Fundraising, Carol Bogar, and let her know that you're interested. Carol is going to be working with our Mahjong maven, Marcia Milliken, on this fundraiser. So good time. And I think that is planned for early winter when it can be so dark and gray here, and that will be a perfect remedy for any winter blahs in Indiana. Lastly, watch your email, watch your mail in December for the 2021 membership confirmation forms for Sisterhood. We are on a January to December fiscal year. So if you can pay your dues in December, that would be oh so appreciated. And again, special thank yous to Sonia, to Rabbi Jordana, to Becky Risto, and all of the breakout room facilitators. This was really a beautiful evening. And one last thing to remind you of, if you have not yet had the time to do a contribution for the High Holiday Appeal for COVID-19, there is still time to do so. And there's a form on the website, temple website, and mail a check to the temple, however you would like to handle that. And most importantly, from my heart to all of you, thank you for being part of Sisterhood. We are stronger because we are together and because we are trying and being like Deborah. So great evening, ladies. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Risa. Can I mention one more quick thing? I'm so sorry. I should have asked you before if I could mention this, but I want to invite you all on Friday. Please join us for not only Shabbat services, but immediately following services, we will give you a moment to go refill your wine glass. And we are trying something new. Our Simchat Torah program is going to be Wheel of Torah. I am hosting a game show with our 3 contestants being our 3 fabulous rabbis. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just plan to stay on for like 20 minutes if you want afterwards. And it's going to be a little bit ridiculous. So we just thought we would do something fun. Rabbi Roxanne's studying. I love it. So join us. Wheel of Torah on Friday night. Thank you.
And was a temple ever so blessed to have 3 female clergy? How lucky are we?
I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody if anybody wants to talk to each other. How about that? I think some of you may have to unmute yourselves if you want to speak. Hello?
Wonderful program, Becky. Good
Thank
job.
you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So lovely. Thank you.
Great job, everyone. A lot of fun.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
This is fun.
Isn't it funny though that the weather is absolutely beautiful?
We're inside.
Of course, we could have been outside, yes.
So ironic.
Who knew?
For the first time in how long?
Ever.
Since we've been doing this.
Don't forget to gift shop. It's so good to see you.
Yes, don't forget the gift shop. Don't forget the gift shop.
Yes.
Great to see everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Joy.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Night.
Bye.
Robin, your hair looks cute.
I like it short, yes.
Thank you. Thought you'd never notice.
Did you do that yourself?
No, no, I wasn't that brave.
Thank you, everybody. It was a great program.
Has a new baby,
This was
Michelle.
really lovely. Thank you, Becky. This was
Oh, Michelle, look at that.
So cute. That's beautiful.
All right, I'm gonna go get my monkeys to bed.
Okay, good night. Thank you, Rabbi. Good night, everybody. I'm going to end the
Thank
meeting.
you.
It was great.
Great evening.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Unzoom.